Hi everyone, this is Paul B, and I need to make a video commentary on an event that happened in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, not even a week ago. Please forgive the external sounds. My new home only has about 12 square feet and 4 wheels. It's about 18 inches shorter than I am, so I'm kind of crammed here in the rain. But what I want to talk about is the murder of a young mother in St. Paul and how possibly, not for certain, but possibly because this fits the pattern of what I have been talking about with Minnesota, with what happened to me, what happened to Todd Stevens, and so many others. Possibly this young girl could have been alive still. What happened was last Tuesday, I believe, I saw a paper laying on a coffee table, and as you can see, it says young mom gunned down on street. And this is typical Minnesota reporting. Before all other concerns, before all humane concerns, before all human decency concerns, they have to get their political agenda out there. She wasn't murdered, she was gunned down, with an emphasis on the word gunned. So it was a gun that killed her. It wasn't a human being that killed her, it was a gun that killed her. And therefore that is meant to trigger in the back of your mind yet more thoughts of gun control. I don't want to talk about that, but I have to point it out because that's exactly what's happening here. This headline should say, young mom murdered on street. But that's not what it says, is it? Folks, this story absolutely, positively broke my heart. And the reason is because when you read it, you find out that this young woman, I believe 24 years old, her name is Sarah Anne Wierstad. She has a 5-year-old daughter. She lived in a house in St. Paul, the capital of Minnesota, and one of the dumpiest cities I've ever seen anywhere in my travels. She worked really hard. She worked 2 jobs to support her daughter, and she was going to school to become a chef. She had dreams, she had hopes. She wasn't living on welfare. I don't see any evidence from any story about her that she was selling drugs, that she was doing anything that my neighbors did to make money. She was doing everything right. And from a quick look at her Facebook page, I don't know anything about Facebook, but one of her subjects there said, "I love being a mom." This girl apparently loved her daughter and was doing everything she could in a really difficult world to take care of that girl by herself. After working 12 hours, she hopped on a bus to come home. She got home and she got shot dead. And her daughter no longer has a mother. Now, everything I'm going to say about the actual case is drawn from media reports, much of which, as usual, comes from them regurgitating whatever the police told them rather than researching anything for themselves. I want to acknowledge that at the beginning of an ongoing case, it does make sense to not reveal all information, and I forgive the press whenever they do not reveal information in the interest of making sure a strong case is made against the perpetrator and that they are convicted and punished appropriately. But I just want to point out that what I'm saying is what is known after 5 days. In fact, right about now in this terrible rain across town, right at this moment, this young woman is being buried by her family. And it makes me wonder if the sound of water I hear on my roof right now is the tears of that 5-year-old girl. What bothers me about this is a couple of things. What struck me originally was that reading the story of this girl, she was doing everything right. She was working hard. She looked like an honest girl, hard worker, working toward goals in the future. And believe me, I do not want to talk about myself or my case. on this video, but I have to bring it up a little bit because I'm trying to show a pattern of total injustice and apathy and negligence and incompetence in the Minnesota justice system. I can't even call it a justice system. It's a legal system. It's a legal system. So I have to mention that likewise, I was working hard in a building of 600 people. I'm the one who was there later than just about everyone else, just about every night, without extra pay. I worked my ass off for that company that ended up throwing me in the trash. And when I came home, I was tortured and tormented by my neighbors who were breaking a very specific, very clearly stated law against noise that interferes with other people's ability to live their lives and enjoy their property. So I was doing everything right, and I had my life completely destroyed by Minnesota's absolute total refusal to do anything to enforce that law. The question is, why did this girl have her life destroyed, and why was her daughter's life destroyed, and her family's? Now it turns out, very quickly, St. Paul Police Department caught a suspect and charged him with the murder of Sarah Anne Wierstad. This is the suspect. His name is Alvin Rudolph Bell. And again, I want to point out that no matter how bad his record looks, the man must be regarded as innocent until proven guilty. But to make the case that I need to make doesn't even require that he is the guilty party in this murder. Because what you're about to see is pretty ugly, even if he had nothing to do with this murder. But from published reports, the evidence does seem very strong. For example, his fingerprints were found in her house. Her house was broken into and ransacked. He used her credit card at a gas station a half hour after the murder occurred. A reasonable person, despite our desire to maintain innocence until proven guilty, a reasonable person would, based on that information, if it's accurate, agree that St. Paul Police probably have the right guy. But I'm not here to accuse this guy. That's for the Minnesota legal system to do. But I want to point out that he was charged with second-degree murder. And I don't know exactly what the difference is between second-degree and first-degree, but I do know that the maximum this guy can spend in prison after destroying so many lives, if he did it, is 40 years under second-degree murder. Something's wrong with this legal system. I don't know what they mean by first-degree murder, but if what they're saying is true, and that guy was ransacking her house, and she came home from working 12 hours, walked in her door, and found this guy who then shot her, stole her purse and her phone, and ran off to the gas station to spend her money. If the most this guy can get is 40 years in prison, I'm sorry, friends, there's something dreadfully wrong with the Minnesota legal system. There's no justice there. It isn't there. Now, what I want to look at is something that the media hasn't bothered to show anyone. First of all, at the time of this recording, I have not seen this mugshot in the media. I went out and found this myself on mugshots.com. I'm assuming it is the correct Alvin Rudolph Bell from Minneapolis with the age that was reported in the press. If it is not, somebody tell me and I will remove it. I have no desire to bear false witness against anybody. But this picture, no picture of this suspect was published in the media so far, as of 5 days after her murder, the day she's being buried. I then went to public records and I found this rap sheet, this arrest record for Alvin Rudolph Bell. Goes back about 3 years. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but I compiled it from the public records, and the first thing I noticed is that the public records don't tell us anything useful. So there's our tax dollars at work. If we want to find out what this suspect's history is, we have to go around hunting and mining and doing an investigation that apparently the Minnesota media didn't bother to do. But this is what I found. This guy has been arrested over and over and over and over again. By all appearances, again, whether he murdered Sarah Wierstad or not, just by his record alone, if I have compiled this record accurately, this guy spends all day, every day, breaking the law. much like my neighbors did. They spent all day, every day, breaking a law. Not a murder law, not that serious, but a law that nonetheless ended up destroying my life, burning it completely to the ground. And the police did absolutely nothing to stop those people. Nothing. What did they do to stop Alvin Rudolph Bell? Well, apparently, nothing. Absolutely nothing. This guy, repeat felon, or charged with repeat felonies. I don't know if he was convicted. I don't know the details, and I'm sorry I shouldn't be doing this anyway. I'm homeless. Why am I doing the research that the media should be doing? This media in Minnesota does absolutely nothing. This is what I found. This is all I know. I don't know if he was convicted of any of these. I don't know. What I can tell you is that despite all these arrests, this guy is out walking among us. He's out driving among us. Of course, he's not right now. He's sitting in jail in St. Paul. But until... I'm really tired of trying to phrase it tactfully. Until he allegedly killed Sarah, he was walking and driving among us. And by this rap sheet, apparently he was trespassing, carrying a firearm as a felon, just breaking every rule in the book. Assault. The Minnesota so-called justice system let this guy go. In many cases here, I'm not seeing where they even had bail for this guy. The bail column, if you look at it, bounces back and forth all over the place. No consistency. The bail does not get more severe with each offense. It looks totally random. It looks chaotic. It looks like this justice system doesn't have the foggiest idea what it is doing. And these are not police departments spread all over the state. These are police departments within the Twin Cities. Minneapolis, Hennepin County Sheriff, Ramsey County Sheriff, Hopkins, Minnesota, which is southwest Minneapolis. So this guy operated within a small region, and yet, look how chaotic this thing is. Misdemeanor here, a felony there. And I'd like to point out that he's charged with assault, 5th degree assault, and it's a misdemeanor. He's charged with domestic abuse, and it's a misdemeanor. But when he makes a terrorist threat, it's a felony. So in other words, when he just threatens to do something, he's a felon. When he actually does something to hurt somebody, it's a misdemeanor. Once again, I have to point out my own situation. People sit there and say, well, all your neighbors did was make a lot of noise and vibration and prevent you from sleeping and such. You know what? That hurt me. That destroyed my life. That affected my life severely. I was tortured and tormented inside my own home. And the police refused to enforce that at all. And if they had, guess what? It probably would have been a misdemeanor, even though they ended up burning my life completely to the ground. Yet, if one of them, instead of doing this from the shadows hidden in their own rooms, if they had knocked on my door, looked me in the eye while I had a recorder going, and threatened me without doing anything to me, they would be felons. This justice system in Minnesota, pardon my French, it is fucked. It is the stupidest, most schizophrenic thing I have ever seen. Nothing makes any sense. No wonder this guy was walking the street where he could allegedly break into Sarah's house while she's coming home. She was working for 12 hours to support her daughter. He was not. He was out robbing people, allegedly. And when she gets home, she gets shot by this clown, and then he uses her money to go buy himself some gas. And there was a 45-year-old woman involved in this too. Not only was his car there at the scene, this woman here, Michelle Koster, allegedly, was sitting right behind his car, possibly as a lookout. And you look at her history. How come I'm able to find out that she was involved in a drive-by shooting, I believe 15 years ago? The Minnesota media hasn't published that. Did they not figure it out, or did they not feel that was relevant to tell anybody? Folks, I'm sorry I cannot organize this talk better. I'm not in the best environment right now for recording anything, but I had to say this. On my website, you hear my story, and my story is the story of a man who had his life completely destroyed, and including I'm probably going to die from this. I don't see how I can survive in a Minnesota winter living in a car, but all hope of my career, the home I was going to build, all of that is gone. And my hope of having a family is gone. And that's the connection here. This girl, obviously, all hope of having her family is gone because she's dead. All hope of having her mother raise her for the little girl is gone. People have a habit of looking at these crimes. They do it like this retarded justice system does, calling a threat a felony and calling an actual assault, something that actually hurts somebody, a misdemeanor. People do that when they look at these stories in the media and they say, well, Paul, all that happened was you got brutalized by loud and violent neighbors. Everyone has to deal with loud neighbors. Well, read my website and hear the real story. They destroyed my life, combined with every Minnesota official who, over more than 3 years, not one of them did anything to enforce the law, to help me, to stop the perpetrator. Instead, they instinctively blamed the victim, me. They defended the perpetrator. Listen to the police call on YouTube. Listen to it yourself. Almost immediately, this guy goes to defend perpetrators who he hasn't even spoken to yet. Just like Alvin Rudolph Bell walked and walked and walked and walked out of that courthouse over and over and over again. And now, even though he has allegedly murdered a young mother, he may, at most, spend 40 years in prison. So he can come out and do something else when he's in his 60s. Because you know what? I don't see anything in this guy's profile that tells me he's going to come out as a great humanitarian. People, I am furious. This stuff is going on all over Minnesota, and nobody wants to talk about it. Over all this time, the press has refused to tell my story. My story, I have deliberately written this website, Minnesota.com, to show the fundamental core problem that is wrong with what I call Minnesota. It's a cult, and it's a dangerous cult, and people are suffering, they're dying, they're having their lives destroyed off camera in most cases. In this case, it was convenient to put it on camera. Why? Because it's a young girl, a young mother. Okay, so there you go. A female. She's murdered by a gun. Well, she's murdered by the guy holding the gun, but she's murdered through gunfire. It fits their agenda. Okay, there you go. Single mom, female, murdered by a gun. In my case, when I went to something like Homeline for legal assistance, I had to put in there that I was a white male. And guess what? The only thing I heard from them was the confirmation that came immediately saying, we usually respond within 1 business day. It has now been almost 11 months. I haven't heard a word from Homeline. Is it because I said I was a white male? It's the same problem with the media. They won't put my story anywhere near where people can hear it, but they'll milk this story for everything they can. They'll exploit this woman. She was murdered, and just look at this headline. Young mom gunned down. Only thing they're concerned about is their gun control. Really, we'll go to Israel right now and watch all those people being stabbed and driven over by cars. These Palestinian terrorists are out there killing people wholesale. They're not using guns, they're using knives, they're using whatever weapon they have. It's the people who kill people. We have had guns in this country all our existence, and we didn't have this kind of violence before. Something else is behind it, not the weapon. Something is not raising people to be good citizens and decent human beings. That's the problem. But what does the Pioneer Press put here? Young mom gunned down on street. This woman died. Her little 5-year-old daughter is motherless now. What is the Pioneer Press concerned with? Gun control. Putting in a reference to guns on the very front page. That's their concern. It sickens me. It sickens me. Is the Pioneer Press going to go to my website, Minnesota.com? Are they going to read all the documentation I have of what is really wrong with this justice system? And are they going to admit that they are culpable by publishing this kind of garbage? Are they going to admit it? And by not publishing what happened to me? No media will touch what happened to me. And I think the main reason for it is because I did document it so well. There's no way you can look at my website and go through the whole thing and not figure out that this so-called justice system in Minnesota is a pile of crap. It is an absolute pile of crap. The only ones it serves is a bunch of lawyers, a bunch of politicians who don't care if other people live or die or suffer. That's it. Why am I living in a car right now when I did everything right? I was working hard. Anne Wierstad did everything right. She was working hard and taking care of her little daughter. Why is she being put in a grave as I speak these words? I think I've said enough on this, because all I can do is get angry. All I can do is get mad as hell. Minnesota is a mean, vicious state, and nobody's doing anything about it. Minnesota Nice is a myth. It is covering up the cult of Minnesota, which dominates business, politics, law enforcement, education, all the major institutions in Minnesota. It's not that every person in Minnesota is bad. Look at what Sarah was doing. She was doing everything right. But look what happened to her for doing everything right. And the reason is because somebody somewhere, apparently, allegedly, let a violent felon, repeat felon, or at least repeatedly charged with felonies, let this person walk and walk and walk among us, drive among us, be among us, live among us. That's life in Minnesota. These people are all over the place. I see them all the time. They scare the living crap out of me. And when you live in a car, guess what? It gets really scary. When you're crumpled up in the fetal position trying to sleep and you hear someone trying your door to see if it's open because they don't even know you're in there. It is terrifying. This is one terrifying state, folks. My website was called Escape from Minnesota because I wanted to get away from this horrifying state. That failed, and I'm stuck here apparently until I die. I am so sorry that Sarah was stuck here until she died. She deserves so much better. With that, the last thing I want to say is my heart absolutely goes out to her family for the loss they've suffered. I don't even know this girl. I don't know the family. I don't live in this part of town. This story has just broken my heart all week. It has saddened me and depressed me more than what I'm going through. I want to ask everyone who's watching this video, I want to ask you not to be a Minnesotan. Find your heart, find your soul, follow the links in the description of this video, and donate money to help this woman's 5-year-old girl and their family. Donate money to help them. From what I can tell, there's 2 donation sites. I'll put both links if I can find them. One of them has raised about $6,000 with a goal of $100,000. I don't understand why they haven't already raised $100,000. Help this girl have some chance of a life. She's not going to be raised with her mother. She doesn't need financial deprivation on top of what she's about to go through as she grows up from age 5 to adulthood. Please, please, click these links and donate whatever you can to help that family. I have nothing to do with these people, and I have nothing to give them. If Minnesota had not destroyed my life, I would have been in a good position to help them quite a bit. So all I can do at this point is pass this message on to you. This is all I can do, and ask you, please help them. Help that little girl. And of course, send your prayers to her, to the little girl, and Sarah Wierstad's family. Sarah, you did a great job. You did the right thing. May you rest in peace.